Welcome to the Cultural Care Forum Day. We are thrilled to have you here with us. Um, Before we start, I would like to introduce myself. My name is Magdalena Ojeda, and I am the Diversity and Inclusion Advisor for the Center. Um, I should say the whole name, right? The Center for Cultural Diversity in Aging. Apologies. So before we go any further, I would like to do a little bit of the housekeeping. We want to remind you that this event is being recorded. So we invite you to put your camera off if you don't want to be seen. At the same time, I want to highlight that we are going to have a section for Q&A. And again, that's going to start from 12:35. Everyone is welcome to either show up in camera or write their question through the chat. I feel like that's the part that I wanted to cover at least at the very beginning. So going back again, welcome again to this online cultural care forum that is an innovative platform where we have pretty much intended to intersect the whole richness of cultural diversity. We are thrilled to be working with pretty much ACCPA on this event, the Age and Community Care Providers Association. So a little bit of us and the motivation for doing this. Well, we at the center, but basically we're funded by the Department of Health and Aged Care under the Partners in Culturally Appropriate Care PCAC program, and we are supported by Benetas. The center, us, provide expertise in cultural inclusive policy and practices for the aged care sector and the service sector. We have over 25 years of experience in supporting aged care providers to address the needs of older people from culturally and linguistically diverse backgrounds. Our vision is that all aged care consumers in Australia experience inclusive and accessible care, and we aim to build the capacity and capabilities of Australian aged care providers to deliver services that we are welcoming. A little bit of ACCPA as well. Important to flag the big part of the organization, Age and Community Care Providers Association, is the National Association for Providers of Residential Aged Care, Home and Community Care, Retirement Living, and related services. Very important to mention as well that their department, the Home Care Careers, is a workforce support program funded by the government and is being delivered in Victoria, Tasmania, by Age and Community Care Providers Association, Human Services Skill Organization, and Powerhouse Hub through a consortium agreement under the brand name Home Care Careers. The objectives of the program are to support eligible providers in Victoria and Tasmania to assist aged care providers attract new entrants to the sector, very important, support providers and new employees for the first years, retain aged care workers in the sector, we all want that, and ensure the ongoing capability of the aged care workforce. Their goal, the goal of the home care career, is to assist all eligible providers in Victoria and Tasmania in their attraction, retention, and upskilling efforts in an attempt to grow and enhance the home care workforce in each respective state. Big mission, and they're doing an amazing work already. So hope that you are as excited as me to give it a start to this event. We're thrilled to have such an interesting agenda, including Professor Irene Blackberry from the Care Economy Institute at La Trobe University, speaking about the well-being of a cultural diversity workforce. We will have as well a very practical and super important session about the cultural appropriate care and where to go for resources by our very own manager, Nicholas Rittinghausen. We will have Fiona Nixon as well from Think HQ speaking about the exciting SAME aged care project And last but not least, we will have Professor Bianca Brichna from the National Aging Research Institute. Thank you so much to all of our speakers for accepting our invitation to speak in this forum today. And thank you all the attendees today. We hope that you find this super important information as useful. So I feel like that's kind of the intro part, but I would like to now introduce Mark Thompson to do a little bit of the welcoming of country. But for you to know a little bit of Mark, he is a Yorta and Wigwurum man with Irish and Scottish heritage. He is a consultant with executive management experience across corporate government and the indigenous community sectors. He's a former director of engagement, communication, and partnership with the Europe Justice Commission and a founding member and current deputy chair of the Adam Briggs Foundation, an Aboriginal control organization aiming to contribute to the sustainability of excellence of the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander communities within the creative industry. Mark has consulted with various organizations and companies on their RAP development since 2016 and has been involved in community documentary projects since 2012. Thank you so much, Mark, for joining us.
Thanks, Magdalena, for that introduction. And hello, everybody. It's a real pleasure for me to have been invited today in lieu of my mother, who unfortunately couldn't make it, Anizita Thompson. But on behalf of her and the Wurundjeri Woiwurrung people, I'd like to start by acknowledging the lands on which you were all meeting or calling in from. In this virtual world, it's a little different to how we usually do it, but I would like to acknowledge the many nations of the lands on which people are calling in from. And I'd like to acknowledge the Bunwurrung people, whose lands on which I live and work on, down along the Mornington Peninsula, and who we as Wurundjeri Woiwurrung people have many shared boundaries with in and around Melbourne in particular. So I'd like to acknowledge our elders, both past and present, and would like to thank our elders for maintaining the knowledge and cultures for tens of thousands of years, and just to talk to the importance of what that means to us as First Nations peoples. We have many different cultures across the nation, as most of you are well aware of. There's many different nations and language groups, and I'd like to acknowledge all of those nations as well, and acknowledge the impact that colonization and certain movements have had on those peoples, cultures, languages, and acknowledge the resilience and strength that our communities have had to maintain some of those connections, and which is welcomes is obviously one of those cultural practices that is continuing today, albeit in a virtual world. So thank you for the opportunity to be here. It is often said in our language, Wominjeka, which some of you may have heard. Wominjeka is often translated directly as welcome. It is more than welcome. It is to come with purpose. So I think it's apt that I say Wominjeka, and welcome you all here today, but obviously to come with purpose. And I was really excited to hear that introduction on what your workshop, what your forum here today is about. The importance of aged care in our communities can't be understated, and I'm by no means an expert or even have much knowledge other than the experience of my families who have been in aged care in ACES in Victoria, in Fitzroy. Many years ago, my grandmother spent a long time there. Our family had a major involvement there, and to see the impact of a culturally safe, relevant, strong service to be able to care for our elders when our family members couldn't or didn't have the expertise or the knowledge on how to do that, when my grandmother was suffering with Alzheimer's and things like this, where we just didn't have the skills and capabilities, and to have a aged care service step in and provide such a wonderful, safe, I keep saying service, and I'm trying to be mindful that it's beyond a service, is how we saw it. It really was a community, because Nan was in this facility with many other Aboriginal people, and I'd like to acknowledge the role that aged care services provide in our community in this day and age. We no longer seem to live with the extended family, as many cultures do around the world. And so to have something like a culturally safe, relevant space for our elders to still feel connected to community, I think is very important. And so I'd like to acknowledge all the work and the research that has been done in this area, and all of you for your work as well. So Wamajeka Yiman Kundibik Waranjeri Balek is welcome to the lands of the Wurundjeri people. For those of you who are on Wurundjeri land, I can't welcome or do that for other nations. But I'd like to welcome those of you who are calling in from Wurundjeri Woiwurrung country, which is basically Naarm or Melbourne, extended suburbs all the way out to Hillsville, which is where a lot of my family originated from as well. And as I said, the Bundwurrung people who we have many shared language words with, not the entire language, even just across the river, it's different languages and stuff like that. I'd also like to just, I'm mindful of not taking up too much time, but I just want to reinforce the importance from an Aboriginal community members' point of view for a culturally safe space and relevant organisations. Another one that sits in our community up on Yuri Yura country in Shepparton is the Rumballara Aged Care facility out there, and many of our elders are in there currently, have recently passed, and the importance of places like that, it cannot be understated, and just what that means to our people. And the Yurok Justice Commission, as Magdalena said, I'm a former director, and that was one of the first places we went actually with the commissioners, because they wanted to touch base with our elders. The role of our elders in communities, we often, with acknowledgements and welcomes, we often say it, oh, we'd like to acknowledge elders, past and present, and all that. But what that actually means to us is that without our elders, we wouldn't have the knowledge that we have as communities. We wouldn't have the songs, we wouldn't have the dances, we wouldn't have the art, we wouldn't have the connection to our communities and our tribal groups and the knowledge on that without our elders. So when we say we acknowledge other nations and that, we're also acknowledging that that is what it is like for Aboriginal communities. I'm sure it's like that for many other cultures around the world, and certainly from people calling in today. And our elders really are our knowledge holders. They're our reason for knowing who we are and marching the streets with pride and standing up for what we believe is right. And the reason we have so many services within the Aboriginal community as well. So Womanjaka Yuma Kundibik, Waranjeri Balek, welcome to the lands of the Wurundjeri people, for those once again who are on there. And I'd like to finally once again acknowledge the elders and the community members and any Aboriginal people who may be on the call today as well, you and your peoples and cultures. And thank you. I wish you all the best for a wonderful forum.
Thank you so much, Mark. Womanjeka, love that meaning of coming with purpose. I'm very lucky today because I just get the easy part to introduce all of you people with all this experience. So thank you so much, Mark. That was beautiful. I am going to continue with our agenda, introducing Professor Irene Blackberry, the director from the Care Economy Research Institute from La Trobe University. Professor Irene Blackberry is the Joint Research Chair and Director of the Care Economy Research Institute at La Trobe University. She has over 20 years of research experience across the care economy in Australia and abroad, predominantly in healthcare, aged care, and informal care sectors. Her research examines access to care and models of care that are innovative, effective, and sustainable building skills in individuals and greater capacity of the whole of community to support people from diverse backgrounds and rural communities. Most recently, she focuses on addressing care crisis by breaking down the siloing of care sectors. She is the leading force behind the Australian care economy research, including developing industry-led research partnership program on care economy, establishing the Care Economy Collaborative Network, and becoming the inaugural director of Australia's first Care Economy Research Institute. Thank you so much, Professor Irene Blackberry. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Magdalena, for your kind welcome. And thank you so much, Mark, for that beautiful welcome to country. If we go to the next slide, please. So thank you again for the invitation, to speak today, to share, like some of the work that we do. First of all, I would like also to acknowledge the traditional custodian of the land that we are meeting today. I understand that, I think most of you are joining from Melbourne. So I used to live in Melbourne, but in the past decade, I have lived in Albury. So that's the Wiradjuri country. So I would like to acknowledge the traditional of the lands. And also La Trobe University, where I'm based, is in Wodonga. So I would like to acknowledge that and pay my respects to elders, past and present, and also to acknowledge, any of the First Nation colleagues that, joining us today. So next slide, please. So I'm not going to spend too much time on this. Obviously, I think, everyone is aware of, whatever else is happening. I guess, here, aged care in Australia, I think, it has been a hot topic, I guess, and more so, I guess, recently. What I do want to say is that, I don't think that, we have solutions for everything. And also, it's not going to go away anytime soon. So this is, I guess, making it, I guess, very important for us, to look at this, obviously we're going to talk about, a part of it today, which is around, the migrant workforce. And in particular, I'm going to share with you about, some of the work that we do around supporting the migrant aged care workforce. But I guess, more importantly, in terms of the context, I guess, is that, the demand obviously is there. We do have problems around the chronic, workforce shortage, obviously. It's great to see that, obviously increase in funding, and the wages, but, it's still not going to solve everything. And also the other part, I guess, with the new Aged Care Act, just being released recently. And also, I guess, overall, I guess the preference, I guess, not only amongst older people, but also, I guess, like in terms of, people wanting to stay independent, that there's a shift there for people to stay at home much longer. So next slide, please. So the questions, it's always, we want more, but, what we did recently is, we actually look at, the Australian data, because I think it's important to put things into perspective, I guess, in terms of, what more do we want and where do we want it and who actually can, who actually needs that. So you've got that, the paper is there, and happy to share the link after the talk, and you can read that, in a bit more details. But what we did with the available data, the census, the AIHW, is using the data linkages to actually show around, where do we need the care, what type of care we need, and also how many more we need, and this is the data projection for the next 10 years. So we just got it published last year, so it is still quite current for most of us here now. So next slide, please. So now, let's focus on this aged care migrant workforce. So obviously, three things, I guess, that I want to mention. The environment, I think, is important when we talk about the well-being. So there are some studies obviously showing, not only here in Australia, but also in the UK about, how vulnerable, these populations, there are a lot of pressures, not only socially, but also like the job insecurity. And that often undermines, I guess, the workers' well-being. And not only that, though, but also the older people that they're caring for. And in terms of ensuring the workers' well-being, we do need to obviously strengthen the workers' capability, about, supporting themselves and other people. But also, I guess, thinking more about securing the contracts and sufficient hours of work, which, obviously in Australia, we have started moving towards that, and obviously, every effort, being put in place, will no doubt, help in terms of better quality jobs, help to reduce the employee turnover and improve their well-being. But I want to focus now, around, particularly around the notion of social resilience and well-being. And partly is because, there are studies, showing that, social resilience is an important part of the well-being. And, social resilience can include things about, people feeling that, they're being welcome, they have access to social services, they can establish new relationships, in the new countries that they migrated to, and also opportunities for further education. So essentially, I guess the studies on this migrant well-being is about, the unwritten social contract. There's some studies that suggest that where the non-immigrants locals, don't need to, I guess, in terms of, how, both the migrant, I guess, and the local can better work together. And in this context, we're focusing around aged care. So next slide, please. So we did 2 studies at La Trobe University around the female migrant aged care workers. And we look at social resilience. And we use the theoretical framework that social resilience, and in particular, we're focusing on the social factors that are needed for individuals to cope, to adapt, and to transform, particularly during a crisis. So part of the data that we collected, also covered that COVID period. So that's quite a powerful and interesting, I guess, learning for us all. So the first study, we look at the social resilience and how female migrant aged care workers, cope, adapt, and transform in their workplaces and also in their communities. And in the second study, we have a larger sample, and we look at, in particular, the agency of the Asian female migrant aged care workers, from migration, entry into aged care employment, to the ongoing, I guess, role that they have, and also the role of institutions, social structures, everything, and how that built the social resilience. So in both studies, the well-being of participants obviously was affected by racism, discrimination, cultural barriers, language barriers, and the low-skilled workforce, low pay, as well as the precarity of work. So next slide, please. So this is the paper. We've published that, and again, happy to share that with everyone later. In particular, we examined the lived experiences of Asian female migrants, especially focusing on the well-being of aged care workers in regional Victoria using a social resilience framework. Next slide, please. So we did the qualitative semi-structured narrative interviews, and also we did an observation, like a fieldwork observation. We targeted the entry-level professional in the aged care sector. And some of the findings that we found is that, the participants, felt that, this is, I guess, their opportunities. They see it as an opportunity for them, to gain professional employment in Australia. So it is a big, I guess, a big thing for the migrant population to be employed in the aged care sector. But the constraints, obviously, that they're facing is, continually is, having to deal with racism, the language, as well as the cultural barriers. And in terms of, I guess, looking at the themes around the coping, adapting, and transforming, in terms of coping is, just the demand of the work. And I think, I do not want have to explain a lot about, what that means. But also, in addition to that, is coping in terms of, like setting up a new life, So migration is a big, I guess, change, not only for them. And if they have families, if you can imagine with, having children, sometimes, parents and so on, even your partner, it's a lot of areas that, learning new skills, I guess, and learning new cultures. The other part is about adapting, about how they can adjust the relations, not only with their colleagues at work, but also about the clients. So they call it, getting to know each other better. And then transforming is about, how they can get, the support that they need, not only from their colleagues at work, but also from the managers, so supervisor, as well as the managers of the facility or the organization, but also, I guess, having that sense of belonging, both at work, I guess, as well as, in the community that they live in. So I guess there's a lot of factor in there, I guess, work, but also, I guess, and in their life. And also, I guess, their career aspirations, to see that as a stepping stone, if you like, into other professions like nursing or healthcare admin work. Next slide, please. So we created these 3 narratives to illustrate how the participants, overcame the challenges that they face as migrants, and as an aged care workers, how they can gain a sense of well-being and social resilience through that progressing, from the first step of, coping when they first arrive to adapting, like how they can be a bit more proactive in that, through transforming, how they can not only, I guess, like the next step, to help themselves, but to also help other people. So the 3 themes here, as you can see, we picked 3 that, we developed the narratives around, the long-term career outlook, how they overcome the language barriers, and also the cultural value of caring. So it's all published in the paper, and you can read more into it. So let's have a look now into, if you go to the next slide, please. The second study is a larger one. Is the idea is to explore about the idea of recruitment and retention for Asian female migrants. And we have collected samples in Victoria, in rural, regional, and urban. And again, we look at this, how, they exercise the agency towards building social resilience. So we also look at the scope, I guess, or the area around carescapes, which is just a broader care environment, beyond, themselves, as a person with the agency, but how they place within that broader ecosystem. Next slide, please. So it's a mixed method. As I mentioned, what I'm going to present to you is the qualitative analysis of the data. So some of the findings, it's no surprises, I guess, it's about the staff ratios, the demand of the workloads, the limited time for them in terms of the challenges that they have to do to carry out their duties at work. Again, the same, I guess, experience of these participants, in this second study around racism and discriminations, both from their colleagues and the clients, but also they reported about, the support that they receive from their management that enable them to feel that, they being part of an inclusive environment, and that contributed to their well-being. And also, obviously, the nature of the job, the precarity of work, it suited to some participants, obviously, to maintain the work-life balance with the studies, with the children, and so on, whilst others obviously prefer to seek a more full-time work. Language barriers, being identified as well. And again, I think, it's a strong theme, which I can show you later on, about the support from the management. And I think this is probably a critical message that, we can discuss later on, as part of this group. So social, obviously, and the community support, is also a critical part of, for them to stay in the job. So next slide, please. So this is a snapshot really about, the workplace support. So type of support that, so over half of the participants reported that, they have received the workplace support. And then, we look at, a bit more in depth about, okay, if you receive the support, can you please describe, like what kind of support that you receive? So as you can see in there that, 36%, for example, reported, having support from diversity officers or, staff from culturally linguistically diverse background. Education, learning, training is another big part, followed by, things like communication and language books or cards or apps. And then the next question that we asked them is about, who would you like to have more support from in your workplace? And, they said that, direct supervisor is important, employer, obviously, as well as the industry representative or peak bodies. Next slide, please. And then we also look at, what further support can be made for migrant female aged care workers in the workplace. So as you can see in there, a huge amount of people, reported that they would like to see more diversity, training, and awareness. So it's quite a strong theme in our survey, followed by the emotional support or debrief. So it's a lot that they have to take emotionally. So the next slide, please. So I'm going to share with you this brief video clip. So, I think it's good for us, to actually hear it directly. And this is a snapshot of their story.
Support I need are, I hope I can get more working skills training, the language training, the culture training, more staff working together, and happy salary paid. If there is a management giving a good skills training for the multicultural people to understand what they are and where they come from, it would be very helpful for us to continue the aged care work in our further days as well. I think we need help and support from the management, mainly because they are the one who set up everything in a workplace. So they can organize some kind of get together or some kind of programs where we can express ourselves. We can put our value, opinion, views. So it will be easier for us to understand each other, so we can work as a team. The majority of the workers come from multicultural backgrounds, so we should put some emotional support or even physical support to help them to overcome when they the barriers, if there is any. From individual level, I think as myself, I would love to do more research or more study or more learning about the other cultures to try to understand their culture rather than, sometimes if I get offended or whatever due to different language, I should, try to find what exactly it means from their perspective of view. So which comes down to communication, which is the most important thing.
So I might as well just share this my last slide then. So, I guess the take-home message, from the studies that we've done is that, the migrant aged care workers, were able to move from coping to adapting to their new workplace and environment, to eventually transform, so to experience not only a sense of belonging, but also to act agentically towards progressing their careers. Supportive workplace environments obviously is important, builds the well-being, but also help build that social resilience. And support from management, I mean, you've heard a lot, in that video, skills training and cultural education can indeed improve, the workplace experiences and also contribute to the retention, not only recruitment, but retention of the migrant aged care workers here in Australia. So I would like to thank you all for listening to me. Would like to invite you to, obviously join us in the Care Economy Collaborative Network. So the link is there. Also would like to thank, obviously, funding from La Trobe University, my colleagues, Monica Winanita in particular, who obviously lead the research, but also Carmela Leone, my postdoc, who are helping me to put together these slides. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Blackberry. Really the slides, and I think it's a lot of important information. So thank you so much for sharing this with us. Really appreciate it. So moving on, just wanted to remind that we have a section, and please keep your questions close to you, because we're going to have a section for that. So I just thought I'd remind you, because I particularly have already some questions for you, Professor Blackberry. So moving on, I would like to introduce our very own manager of the Center for Cultural Diversity in Aging, Nicholas Rittinghausen. He has a significant experience in project management, multicultural affairs, aged care, policy, advocacy, social cohesion, and community engagement, just to name a few. He held senior advisors and senior policy officer and project coordinators roles, and he has provided secretariat support to policy committees in the area of multicultural aged care, and consulted across Australia on access issues of seniors from culturally, linguistically, and spiritually diverse backgrounds to aged care services, and was the editor of the multicultural aged care magazine, Golden Years. Just summarize this because it's a little bit of a very long experience. So thank you so much, Nicholas. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Magda, for that lovely introduction and for doing the great facilitation of our forum. And I also want to really thank ACCPA for this great partnership, for organizing this forum together with us. We're really excited that we have the opportunity to do that. And I'm also on the lands of the Wurundjeri people, because we are here in Naarm as well. So I just want to say that I think we can go to the next slide. This is sort of an overview of what we are doing, and what I thought it's probably easiest if we share the little video, because Magda's already mentioned a few things that we do at the center. So I think we can go straight to the video. So it gives us a snapshot of what we're doing here at the center in the current reform context.
There's big change happening in aged care through the reforms. If you work in aged care, that's a lot to keep up with. We get it. That's why we offer you practical support. Culturally inclusive aged care is becoming more and more important to the government. The Centre for Cultural Diversity in Ageing can help you prepare for this. Culturally inclusive care considers the unique social, cultural, language, religious, spiritual, and psychological needs of each older person. Embedding culturally inclusive policies and practices into your organisation puts you ahead. It prepares you to meet your regulatory and compliance responsibilities. It's an essential business practice because consumers have choice to go with services that best meet their diverse needs. Most importantly, you'll offer the care that older people need to live safely, comfortably, and with dignity, where their unique culture is recognised and respected. Embedding culturally inclusive policies and practices into your organisation is a long process. If you're starting now, halfway through, or advanced, you are ahead of the change that's coming. And we're here to help. The Centre for Cultural Diversity in Ageing. We'll keep you up to date with government information about supporting diverse consumers. We'll listen to you and amplify your voice back to government. Our website is full of resources you can use to support culturally diverse older people, their families and carers. Our inclusive service standards provide a framework that supports your organisation to become truly inclusive. Our online training series supports you and your staff to build cultural competency skills. We provide mentoring, tailored training and consultations. We support you to build relationships with other organisations and share good practices. The Centre has been supporting the aged care services sector for over 20 years. We're recognised nationally and internationally for our expertise. We're funded by the Australian Government Department of Health and Aged Care through the Partners in Culturally Appropriate Care program and supported by Benetas. We're here to support you with the latest government information, resources, tools, training, mentoring, consultation and relationship building. Visit culturaldiversity.com.au to find out more.
Thank you very much, Michelle, for sharing that video. I really appreciate it. It gives a bit of a snapshot of what we're doing and how we can support you as an organization. We do that in a number of ways. And so a lot of our resources that we have developed, they were actually developed in co-designing them with aged care providers, listening to the needs, what aged care providers, and it includes our webinars as well. Often we get feedback what, should be topics for future webinars. So we can go to the next slide. And I'm going to talk about what we offer at the Centre to support providers on their culture inclusive aged care journey. We are the Partners in Culture Appropriate Care program for Victoria, but a few of the things we do are nationally focused, like this, our webinars, and obviously everybody can access our national website for support, help, and resources. And these are some of the key things we have. So I will talk about them in a little bit more detail, but on our cultural diversity website, so www.culturaldiversity.com.au, we have a number of resources. And actually, before I started at the Centre, about 2.5 years ago, I didn't realize how much detail and how many resources there are. For example, one of our key resources are inclusive services, which were mentioned in the video, which we help organizations to implement inclusive practice across the organization. But there's so many other resources that are linked to the inclusive service standards that are on our website. A lot of providers are not often aware of, and it's, for example, having for staff surveys to capture diversity of staff and that sort of thing. And I also want to mention, because Irene was talking a lot about, the workforce and the well-being of the workforce. We're actually working at the moment on a practice guide on managing and supporting a culturally linguistically diverse workforce, because we know that workforce is a big issue, and we always receive feedback that people want to find more out in terms of, responding to workforce issues, especially if they're from culturally diverse backgrounds. So they were one of our most popular webinars, and Irene was one of on these webinars. I think we can go to the next slide. These are examples of the topics we are running in this financial year, our interactive webinar series. And Irene, as I said, was one of them, and they already happened. But if you would like to access, you can access them, the recordings, on our YouTube channel. CCDA-AUS is the name of our YouTube channel, or you can also go through our training tab of the website, where we have the webinar series from this financial year, but also from previous financial years and some of our conferences. Now, the next one that's coming up is next Tuesday. We have a webinar on homelessness in culturally diverse communities, but specifically from a female perspective, so women in homelessness. And then other topics are coming up. It's a bit small, but culturally inclusive recreational and social support programs, and then overcoming social isolation amongst culturally diverse seniors. And in April, we have navigation support programs helping seniors from multicultural backgrounds actually to access aged care service. If you want, you can access all these, information or registration links on our training tab of our website, which I have shown before. I think we can go to the next slide. So as I mentioned before, we have the inclusive service standards that are linked to the current aged care quality standards, and they're one of the key resources that we have, and they help organizations to meet, the aged care qualities and from that sort of inclusive service lens. So we have 3 standards. That's commitment to inclusive service, capacity building to inclusive service, and then implementing some of them and how that could look like. So basically, the inclusive service standards, they have a number of substandards and subcategories. In total are 16. And we have Magda with us today, obviously, and she runs the diversity mentoring program, where we use the inclusive service standards to measure, as part of the diversity mentoring program, how people are, start at the beginning of the inclusive journey through the diversity mentoring program, how they're faring at the beginning, and then how are they doing it at the end. So that's a way of us measuring that. So I'm just giving a warning, I have to be a bit quicker with time. So we can go to the next slides. We still have 10 minutes. Okay, that's fine. So we work with the Aged Care Quality and Safety Commission. And this is a model, this is mainly for direct care staff, but helping organizations to deliver culturally inclusive aged care. Now, this is available through the ALICE platform of the Aged Care Quality and Safety Commission. And it's sort of a 10 to 15 minutes module, and everybody can access that for free if you're a government-funded aged care service provider. And we're now looking into if we develop something also for aged care leaders. So feel free to access that either through our website or through your platform with the Aged Care Quality and Safety Commission, the ALICE platform. Okay. I just got a comment from Natalia. We have worked a little bit. She is interested to find more about our practice guide, so we definitely will share that with you. We're hoping to release that early in April, and maybe we can work together with you. What are some of the elements of the practice guide? Thanks, Natalia. Next slide, please. So these are some of the, actually, this is our most popular resource, is our communication cards. And we have, we get quite a few hits for them, and they were developed by my predecessor, Levitsa Petrov and Antonia Gucciardi-Maschi. And until today, they're the most popular resource. And what they do is basically these cue cards, they help simple communication between the staff member and an aged care client. And you see there's an example, for example, kosher food, halal food, or vegetarian food that is in English, but also then in the target language. In that case, it's Farsi. And what we did, as I said, we sometimes co-design resource. We work with a provider from the Southeast here in Melbourne, and they wanted to have these communication cards into phrase cards. So what we did, we also developed phrase cards. So we have the communication cards in 70 languages, but also in phrase cards, and that includes the pronunciation of these cards. Well, most of the providers are aware of these cards because they're quite widely used. So maybe you've already come across them. So thanks. We can go to the next slide. So practice guides, I mentioned the one that we are currently working is managing, supporting culturally diverse workforce, because that's what we got, feedback from providers to do that. And we had organizations, providing feedback, including Irene provided feedback, and we got support from Bianca as well, who's speaking later today. You see, these are some of the examples of our practice guides. They have sort of a bit of a snapshot on that specific topic in culturally appropriate care, whether it's end-of-life care, food and nutrition, culturally inclusive feedback, 2-4 pages, give you sort of a first start or insight into the topic, where you can go for further support, what sort of resources are available, and what you want to consider when, for example, working with bilingual staff or accessing diverse media. Culture appropriate dementia care is another one. 10 steps to developing a diversity inclusion plan is another thing where we work with Uniting New South Wales Aged Care to develop that practice guide as well. So we always try to get feedback from providers to make our resources current. I think we can go to the next slide. The Resource Partnership Program, which we launched in December at our Cultural Diversity and Aging Industry Breakfast, we help you to integrate the many resources we have into your learning management systems, into your websites, and you can pick and choose one of our top 10 resources if you want to, use them and use them into your website. So, for example, we can send you the SCORM files of our inclusive service standards training. What we have, website. We have a number of YouTube videos, like our webinar recordings. Things like on YouTube we have as well how seniors from multicultural backgrounds can make a complaint or compliment about the service, and we are translating that video now into a number of languages as well. We have that already in a few languages, but through the free translations project, what Fiona's talking about later, we are translating that into even more languages, which is really really exciting that project exists. So this is, you will get the presentation at the after the webinar, but basically on our website, you can make through that resource partnership program, you can fill that form in on our website. There's a form on our website, and you can choose which resources you would like to integrate into your website or into your learning management system. Thanks, Magda, for sharing our website link. We can go to the next slide. So yeah, as we said before, we are funded by the Department of Health and Aged Care through that PCAC program, where there's a PCAC program in each state and territory. So if you are not from Victoria, you can access, through the PCAC Alliance or our website if there's the PCAC in your state or territory, and they can also help you with training or whatever you need to deliver culturally inclusive aged care. Next. Here, there's a few things I thought I mentioned, which organizations or programs can provide support to you, especially when it comes, to home care. And I just want to mention that, for example, the Ethnic Communities Council of Victoria has a good newsletter called Golden Years, where it features multicultural aged care topics on their newsletter. Australian Multicultural Community Services from the West in Melbourne, they do a lot to support seniors from diverse multicultural backgrounds. So you could also contact them. Then I also encourage you, if you're looking into partnering with multicultural organizations, maybe think about partnering or working with or co-designing services with the local migrant resource centers across Australia. Their migrant resource centers doing great jobs to support seniors. They have a lot of sort of activities that they run and they do. And then SBS, because they have a lot of multicultural media on their website. So whether it's, people maybe want to watch something in Italian or a show in French, whatever it is, you can access SBS on demand. But also interesting, there is the SBS Census Explorer, which gives you a local snapshot of your diversity in your area. For example, if you go, let's say, Brimbank Council, you can have a look, what are the main ethnic and multicultural communities in that local government area. Gives you, good diversity of face, culture, language, all that sort of thing. And then obviously Spiritual Health Victoria, who has a great multi-phase calendar on their website as well, which is good to access key sort of dates for interface and multi-phase activities that they are running, that are happening. And then Palliative Care Victoria, their culture responsive palliative care project. And then obviously our multilingual resource page. So we have a lot of multilingual resources, so not just from our own organization, but from other organizations, whether it's health translations from the Victorian government or whether it's from Palliative Care Victoria, different tip sheets or information provided in different languages. You can access that through our multilingual resource page. Then I want to just mention the Care Finder program. Probably a lot of you have heard about that, but that helps basically before people accessing servicing, helping people from diverse backgrounds, from diversity groups to access aged care services. So there's more information on the My Aged Care website there. And then this is specific to Victoria, I have to say the Access and Support program, similar to the Care Finder program, helping people to navigate and access aged care services. That's running at the moment in tandem with the Care Finder program. And we're going to talk about that later through Fiona, the free translations project funded by the department, and then obviously translation and interpreting service through TIS National. And most of you would have a client code that you can that people are using to support people if they need interpreting support. And then I just want to mention a lot of multicultural organizations. They have social support groups where people, you know, have access to same culture, same language, social support groups, and they do really great job in the CHSP space. And now it's also funded through the home care program to access, you know, social activities in their preferred language or in their preferred culture. I think it's pretty much coming towards the end. I think there's just a poster. If you want to use or download that poster, that's how you can quickly access, you know, or promote the service that we do. If you want to share that with your colleagues in your staff rooms, and I think we can go to the next slide, and that's it. So if you know, feel free to reach out to us. We are very pleased that we had the opportunity today to partner with ACCPA on this, you know, forum. And as I said, on our website, we have many different resources, and Max just put our contact info email into the chat box. But we're always happy to hear from you and you know, see what information or things that you were interested to work on or to learn further. We also do a few things in regional Victoria. We have a focus at the moment also doing training in regional Victoria. So I think that's it from my side. I hand it back over to Mark. Then I thank you for listening. I'm looking forward to the Q&A session.
Thank you so much, Nikki. I could see already that the audience has found very useful these links. We're very excited about it. Following up in terms of the agenda, we're going to have Fiona Nixon, the Chief Strategy Officer at Think HQ. Fiona is an experienced communication and sustainability leader. She has worked in the private sector and consultancy, as well as in the public sector, where she managed communications for social policy portfolios, including multicultural affairs. Fiona leads Think's HQ's strategy and insights team, providing guidance and expertise in inclusive communication to clients and across the whole agency. She is currently overseeing the establishment of the Department of Health and Aged Care Translation Services within Think HQ. Thank you so much for joining us today, Fiona.
Thank you so much for that introduction, Magdalena, and also to ACCPA for the invitation to be here today. I am joining you from the traditional lands of the Yalukit clan of the Boonwurrung here in South Melbourne. So I would just like to acknowledge their elders, past and present, in kicking off today's session. So as Magdalena said, Think HQ has just recently taken over this service, although the Department of Health and Aged Care has obviously been providing this free translation service for the past couple of years. And it is a really valuable service that we are really encouraging the sector to access and to use, because it is an important piece of the puzzle. Obviously, Nicholas just talked about a whole range of work that is going on to help the sector both understand and respond to the needs of multicultural communities. But this providing in-language information is obviously a very important piece of that whole puzzle. So today I will, I can get my slides to move, sorry. Work this out. There we go. So today I wanted to just give you a bit of an overview of this translation service and talk you through the sort of eligibility for it, what's involved, what we can translate and what we can't, and give you a bit of a sense of the kind of process for accessing the service. So I suppose really to start with, the real intention of this is recognising that people in Australia, older people in Australia, speak many, many different languages. And in fact, in 2021, the census showed for the first time that we are a majority migrant nations. So over, I think it's just over 50% of us were either born overseas or have a parent who was born overseas. So, you know, multiculturalism is mainstream. And Think HQ is an inclusive communications agency. We have a large multicultural communications branch within our agency. And so we have a great depth of experience in designing communications for different multicultural communities, which is why we're pretty honoured to be able to take over this service, and we're really passionate about making it a highly useful and valuable service for all of you. I guess when we're thinking about, you know, there's a whole lot, as Nicholas was talking about, there's a whole lot that goes into culturally safe and appropriate care. But thinking about the English proficiency of different communities is really where this program is valuable. So, you know, while it is about making sure that people can make informed choices and have the information they need to make choices, it's about supporting your clients, but it's also about supporting families and helping them convey the right kind of information to people so that they can access the care that they're entitled to as they age, whether it's at home or whether it's in different kinds of care. So I guess the really key part of this program is providing materials, as I said, that will help people make choices, and it's about providing people information in their language and in the language that they prefer to speak at home. We all recognise that the sector is dealing with a lot of change at the moment. And obviously running the services, but also dealing with a lot of change. And so the service is designed to be as simple as it can be to use. And I'll talk a little bit about the process in a moment, but really we're encouraging people to submit a very high-level request, and then we allocate one of our customer service representatives who guide people through the process, and all of those people have a lot of experience working with different types of clients to manage that process, which I'll talk about. So how it works is really that we take the information that you already have for your clients that might be in English, and we translate it into the languages that you might need in your organisation. I guess there's a couple of points to make about this process. So we work with a network of about 250 Australian-based translators to make for the program. The importance of them being Australian-based is that not only are they sort of certified, but also they understand the Australian context, which is really important when we're trying to translate information that sometimes might be technical or might be information that's, you know, uses terms of phrase that are used in Australia and may not be used in people's home countries. The other thing that is really important when we're looking at English materials to translate is making sure that the English versions of those documents are ready for translation. Some words and phrases, if translated directly, won't actually convey the meaning. And so we also make sure that in that process, we're working with you to make sure that the English version is ready before we start to translate the documents. The other part of the service is providing those documents back to you in the same kind of design format. So part of the service is also making sure that the in-language materials are designed and look, you know, have the same quality set of design and quality as the English versions of the materials. Okay, so I might just talk a little bit about the eligibility for the program. The eligibility is very broad, so the service is open for all aged care providers who are providing a lot of care under that list of programs that you can see there on the left. And I guess that they are also Australian government subsidised providers. So it is really a broad range of providers who can access the care. It is also the service, apologies. It is also open for all the peak bodies and members of the PCAC program that Nicholas talked about, and also the care finders and care connectors groups who are obviously playing that really important role in helping people navigate the aged care system and find the care that is right for them. The next bit of the eligibility is quite important. So the service is about translating materials that you've created and that you own the copyright for. So it is really for existing materials. Those materials can be printed or digital. So they can be printed materials or video. And so they can be in a number of different formats, but the important thing is that you own the copyright. So we can translate materials that come from other organisations, but we really need that request to be approved or come from those original owners of the materials. In terms of the types of materials that are eligible under the service, this is really information that is about the details of the service, so people can really understand what is involved. So it could be like welcome material, form templates that you need people to provide information back to you in facility wayfinding signage, which is obviously really important to help people find their way around. As well as I mentioned, also audio and video messages that help people better understand or participate in the service. So they can take a number of different formats, but the idea is that it's detailed information about your service. So on the flip side, the kinds of things that are not eligible for this service are personal or individual information. So individuals' care plans or documents. Marketing material falls outside this service, and we're really assessing that based on, is the primary purpose of this information to attract new people to a specific provider rather than being general information about the services available. We understand that sometimes there's a bit of crossover of these, but it's really about the primary purpose. We also, the aged care information that is from the Department of Health and Aged Care or the Aged Care Quality and Safety Commission, and is of a general nature, it's not eligible. Both of these organisations are translating quite a lot of material as well. And when we are getting requests that relate to these materials, those requests are being highlighted with the department to indicate that there's a demand for that. And also frequently changing materials. So we won't be able to translate sort of weekly newsletters or menus or things that are changing quite regularly. Okay, so in terms of the process, we are inviting people to either call us or email us or to visit the website that you can see there. And there is a form there that you can lodge a request on. It takes a couple of minutes to fulfill. And as soon as we get that information, someone will get back to you within 48 hours or sooner. We then will work with you to really understand the requirements that you're after, and we do gather a bit more information during that process to make sure that we really have the brief correctly documented. We then, as part of that, will go through that assessment of the eligibility and sort of talk you through any issues that might arise from that. And we also give you a sense, I guess, of the value of that translation. So we'll be able to, we do give you a sense of I guess, that monetary value of that. Once that's ready, we then will start the translation process, and we also give you a sense of how long that turnaround time is going to be. So obviously for common languages and short pieces of documentation, that can be turned around more quickly than if it's longer documents and languages where there are not as many translators available. So that we have a system where we can estimate the turnaround time and give you that. And then once those are all ready and designed, we then upload the files in the formats that you need and provide them back to you. So thank you very much. I know that was quite a quick sort of overview, but please feel free to reach out to us via the website or via the phone, and we can talk about some of your plans for translations and provide that advice and support along the way. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you so much, Fiona. I feel like after your explanation, you are going to have an overboard of visitors to the Diversity Aged Care page. I reckon, especially offering that amazing service. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. I have in the agenda, we're going to speak with Professor Bianca Brichna. And Professor Brichna is the Divisional Director of Social Gerontology at the National Aging Research Institute, NARI. Her disciplinary training is in medical anthropology and public health, and her research expertise is in cultural diversity, dementia, and mental health. Within these disciplinary and contextual boundaries, she has undertaken several studies on dementia prevention, awareness, diagnosis, and care, specific to culturally diverse community in Australia and internationally. She has authored over 100 publications, including a sole authored book with Bergham Books titled Unforgotten, Love and the Culture of Dementia Care in India, and produced more than 30 multilingual films, comics, and animations. In recognition of her research, she was inducted into the State Government of Victoria's Multicultural Honor Roll in 2022. Thank you so much, Professor Brichna, to be with us here.
Thank you, Magda, for that very kind introduction. Just checking that you can see my slides and that they are in present view. Excellent. Thank you so much. So today I'm going to very briefly talk to you about a new area of research that we are increasingly venturing into, which is really around racism in aged care. I have to put the little disclosure up front that in some ways what I'm presenting to you today is a mixture of research, but also a mixture of workshop content that we deliver across Australia to address the problem. So my talk to you today is as much around content as it is about a sales pitch. So if you're not interested in the sales pitch, that's fair enough. But I thought I should disclose that to you up front, because we do deliver a workshop in this space. And today really, this is what we cover in the workshop. And today what I'm going to do is give you a little taster and I guess talk you through why we need to talk about this issue with regards to the demographic transition that's going on in Australia. Racism being really the elephant in the room that we all experience in our workplace, but very rarely talk about and address. And I'm going to give you a little bit of a roadmap that we've come up with for how you might respond to it. but foreshadowing, of course, that there are many other critical aspects that I won't cover in today's talk due to shortage of time, but I do cover in depth in the workshop. All right, so Australia, as you all know, is an increasingly aging and an increasingly multicultural country. Up until about 2016, and we've got these graphs on the side there, you will see that we've had a very rapid increase in our older population. And by 2056, about 20% of the Australian population is going to be over the age of 65. So that's going to be around 8 million people. It's a significant increase, and we do therefore need to cater to that demographic. But when we look at what is really driving that demographic in terms of aging, what we see is a significant growth in our older migrant population. So if you look at the bottom graph, the bit in the gray is the Australian-born community, and you see it's relatively stable. It's sort of plateaued, right? But if you look at what's happening with migrant communities, which are all in the different multicolored bands there, you see that they're actually significantly increasing. Now, not all communities are significantly increasing. Some are actually decreasing. So Southern and European-born communities, which are really our Greek and Italian communities, are diminishing in numbers, but other ones are increasing. For example, the Northeast Asian communities, the Oceanic communities, our Pacific Island communities, etc. And really what we've done through our modeling is demonstrate that there is a projected 200% increase in Asian-born communities that are over 65 between now and 2056. So our population and who we are servicing is different. At the same time as our aged care populations are increasingly aging and diverse, so too is our workforce. Presently, about 35% of Australia's workforce working in residential aged care come from a co-alter background or a culturally and linguistically diverse background. And principally, the staff are coming from the Philippines, India, Iraq, and Sudan. More recently, we have seen more arrivals from other parts of other African nations as well, joining our workforces. But overall, on balance, the aged care workforce is predominantly female. And when we look at where our migrant aged care workers are working, they're principally working as PCAs or personal care attendants. So they're really at the front line. Then they work a bit more in nursing, a very small proportion in allied health. And we have no data about how many are actually working in management. And I would suspect that as we go further up the chain, when we get to more senior management, you'll probably find very limited diversity at that level. And that is a problem. Our aged care workforce are rapidly increasing in terms of diversity, principally actually driven from South Asia. So between 2011 and about 2016, there was something like a 333% increase in South Asian workers alone. And that is going to continue to rise and followed closely by workers from African nations as well at about 143%. So a very diverse workforce. Racism is the elephant in the room. It's rarely talked about, but frequently experienced. And staff tell us that they experience prejudicial treatment on the basis of the color of their skin, the accent they have, and even the way they might provide care. Because, of course, many people are failing to recognize that so many aspects of care are very much culturally oriented. Even something as simple as an afternoon tea or a face wash is not necessarily something that is commonly applied or used all over the world. So we do need to recognize that. Now, racism, of course, is not just confined to aged care. It is something that permeates across societies and again, not just in Australia. I just wanted to take a quick point here to define what we mean by racism. And it's really the process by which systems and policies, attitudes, and actions create inequitable opportunities and outcomes for people on the basis of the color of their skin or their perceived color of their skin or ethnicity. I really want to underscore here that race as a biology is a fiction. So this notion that certain communities have particular attributes based on the color of their skin is absolute nonsense. There is no evidence for that. But racism as a social problem is definitely something that we all experience. I also want to take this opportunity to really, I guess, clarify about how we think of racism and what really manifests in practice. So when we think about it, we often think about it sometimes as a one-way street, that it is the kind of Australian-born community, principally the white community, that is being discriminatory or prejudicial towards other communities of color. And that is really not the case. This is how we need to think about racism, right? We know that there are prejudicial treatments and discrimination within multicultural communities directed towards each other, from different migrant communities directed to the mainstream community, the mainstream white Australian community, from the white Australian community directed to others as well. So it is a much more entangled web. And it's not just one group that is being prejudicial or discriminatory, it's all of them. So we really have to think about it in a more holistic way in terms of how it operates in society and in aged care. Now, aged care has a number of very unique challenges, I think, when we consider how we might respond to racism. And it's not a simple case that we might see in other instances where you can sort of say, well, we're not going to tolerate this in the workplace, and this is completely unacceptable. And, we can kind of be very strident and forceful about how we construct a response. Because the fundamental task of aged care is care, it is a very different way of responding and how we think about it. So some of the challenges that many of you might encounter in your workplaces is that your service might be the last port of call for a very vulnerable client. There might be nowhere else for them to go, or they've gone to other places and this is it. Your client might be living with vulnerability, frailty, chronic conditions, including dementia. And how are you going to respond to racism in the context of dementia? They might have been waiting, and they and their families might have been waiting for a very long time to access services, and they're feeling very frustrated because things have been deteriorating at home and there's no one there to help, and finally help has arrived. But the help may not be in the form that they have wanted or desired. And while there's major reform happening in the sector, it also creates a lot of, flux and chaos and friction for both providers and also for clients and users of the system, because things are changing quite rapidly. And it's not always smooth sailing and understanding what's going on. We know that there are massive workforce shortages in aged care, and often those workforce shortages are being, addressed by an increasingly multicultural aged care workforce, and even through some of the fly-in, fly-out arrangements that the government has initiated with many Pacific Island nations as well. So all of this in this kind of big mix, right? You have this kind of a lot of churn. And so clients will say, well, actually, I really want to be culturally matched with a staff member, right? Or I don't want to work with these particular kinds of staff. And I want to work with someone who's going to, talk to me in English and who I can understand, right? And that makes it really challenging for providers because, for example, we often hear, well, some families might say, well, I want a Greek speaking personal care attendant who is a woman to come and attend to my mom. Well, good luck finding one, right? So you have to sometimes deal with what you have, right? You dealt that sort of the hand you dealt with. And so how do you kind of navigate and deliver good quality person-centered care in that kind of a situation? And oftentimes what happens is you don't. And it becomes a very transactional interaction between staff and clients, and neither one are really happy to be looking after the other or to be interacting with the other, and it really is not conducive to good quality care. So we do need to address racism. It is a really critical barrier to good quality care. Racism is also very bad for health. There's a strong body of evidence around this now, and that if your staff are consistently exposed to racism at work, these are some of the things you can expect them to experience as they go along. So it's not a good idea in terms of letting it just slide and letting it just continue. It's also very bad for staff in terms of retention and recruitment. So this is a quote from a study we did where we interviewed different PCAs working across Australia. And, you know, in this instance, the staff member said, look, I really love to work and look after older people. And I didn't actually have a problem with the residents. I'm patient and tolerant, and I know that they need care. But what I hated was colleagues talking about me behind my back. I was constantly having heartache and I couldn't sleep, even after work. I had to quit. If I'd stayed there, I would go mad. And this is a story that we hear time and time again, right? That racism is directed towards a lot of staff by residents, sometimes by family members, and oftentimes also by other staff members too. The typical response that most people tell us they will do is that they will endure it for as long as they possibly can, and then they will quit. That is not a good outcome for anybody. Because if people quit, we know the impact on the organization is that it is going to drive down innovation, profit, market share, and it's going to drive up absenteeism, turnover, and staff morale and productivity are not going to be very optimal at all. So it's not good for the organization, it's not good for the individual staff member, and it's certainly not good for the clients. We know where there is racism, there is a greater likelihood of abuse and neglect of the client. There's more likely to be an inappropriate use of restraint, unreported assaults, and people in very extreme pain at the end of life not actually getting access to palliative care. Ultimately, what we end up with is a system and an environment where people don't trust and respect each other. So that is really not an optimal outcome for anyone. So that's something that we want to change. And when we looked at some of the evidence around the world of what might work when we want to address racism in aged care, there's all sorts of things that can be done. The first one is, of course, that you need to actually set family expectations and understand that reciprocity in a friendship and a kind of familiar-like relationship between the worker and the resident or the care recipient will go a very long way. They don't have to be best friends, but they do need to respect each other. We also need to sometimes harness some of the cultural perceptions of care that migrant care workers hold. And this is something we do not do in Australia, and it is a missed opportunity because many of our workers have very meaningful understandings of what care means from their culture, of what respect for older people means, and we don't harness that at all. And it's to our own detriment. The job is difficult. Care work is difficult. We need to acknowledge that. And we need to foster reciprocity between workers and clients to share insights and information with each other. You don't have to give your deep sort of personal life histories, but you do need to have some degree of engagement and reciprocity about what is going on. To put it more simply, what I always say in my workshop is you drink the tea, right? So you're offered a cup of tea when you go to a client's house, just drink it. Won't kill you, hopefully. But for the most part, you know, drink the tea, foster that reciprocity, foster that engagement. And of course, all of this needs to occur within an organizational context where the worker is appropriately supported through language services, as well as professional development opportunities. What we also do in our workshop is talk about a roadmap for an organization, because what I've outlined previously as sort of interpersonal activities or acts that workers can do. But really that organizational scaffolding must be there. Now, this is a very simple slide in some respects, but we do kind of flesh it out with the evidence that I talked about earlier at different time points. So if we hypothetically started in the green zone, right, what I would allocate there or advocate there is, you know, keep an open door, listen to your staff so that they can come to you when an issue does arise. And when that issue does arise, it is important to investigate and discuss it, to explore what happened and to find solutions, be it around culturally matching the client if possible, rotating the care worker so they're not continuously exposed to that environment, giving them a buddy, all sorts of things you can do at that point. You need to obviously then check in with your strategy that you apply and see what works in practice, as well as check in with the resident and the family, right? I keep saying resident here, but I mean, I do mean the older person. So check in with them and the family. whether their needs are being better met or whether things are going more smoothly. Hopefully that should be the end of the matter, but if another red flag goes up, then you need to escalate, investigate, and discuss what's happening. That's when you bring in HR, you look at OH&S, all of those sorts of things as well. And then again, you need to kind of reinforce to the older person in the family what is expected. Now, ultimately, you might end up in a situation where, despite checking in more frequently, more and more red flags happen. You might eventually have to actually just terminate the contract or service you're providing to that particular client, because ultimately, if their behavior and attitude you cannot meet their need, no matter what you have tried, then you really need to think about alternative models or solutions to it. Hopefully, though, with some of the tools and tips that we give through the workshop, you never ever end up in that red zone at all, because that's really an outcome of last resort and really not an optimal one at all. Other things organizations can do to really support their staff and to build culturally safe workplaces is to be motivated about it. And you can derive your motivation from all sorts of places, right? You can have a strong sense of social justice. You may be of a gold background yourself. Maybe you just like to travel around the world and be exposed to different cultures. But you need to be personally motivated to do this kind of work. You also need to be professionally resilient to do this kind of work, because, aged care is hard and you will encounter all sorts of difficult things on a daily basis, not just racism. And so having that professional resilience and helping staff build that resilience is critical. And organizational support around it is also critical. And this doesn't mean that your organization must be a one-stop shop. Sometimes that's not possible, but it does mean connecting in with a wider network of services and supports that may be available to you, whether in your local catchment area or whether more nationally as well through language support services like Fiona was talking about a little bit earlier on. So we need to sort of think about those critical foundations, and certainly a cookie cutter approach won't just work. Now, I've given you a really quick taster of some of the things that we talk about in the workshop. Obviously, I haven't been able to go into a lot of depth with it. The workshops are about 2.5 hours long, and I've condensed a lot of that content into about 15, 20 minutes. So it's a bit of a drastic edit. But I do want to really underscore a couple of quick points, and that is we are having some very unique opportunities in Australia now with our demographic transitions and the kind of people who are now entering into our workforce. We cannot look at migrant care workforce as sort of empty vessels that need to be filled up with a whole lot of knowledge. And like as though they come to us as blank slates a priori, they bring very valuable, critical cultural knowledge and insights from their own backgrounds, and we need to harness those talents as well. And only through doing things like that will we really address the serious challenge of racism that we do encounter in our day-to-day practice. And it absolutely can be done, and it must be done in order to deliver good quality care. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Richna. This was truly eye-opening. Really fantastic to hear about this very topic. I feel like the sector was needing this. Moving on, we're jumping to the section that I think everyone was probably waiting for, the Q&A section. So do we have from the audience? I think we have some things in the chat. Definitely we have a comment. Thank you, Bianca. Such important work you're doing. Thank you, Bianca, for shedding light on such a challenging and vital topic for providers. Yes. Well, if I feel like I'm going to be a little bit, I'm going to jump with my questions. I suppose that addressed to everyone, but particularly Professor Blackberry, I'm very interested in your research, particularly about the support that the care workers had during or the two research projects that you talk about. do they have an extra support in terms of mental health? I know that across the board is generally the typical psychological IPA support. Would this staff have an extra additional support?
So in my research, we found that, it's quite a stigma, I guess, to talk about mental health. And so I think, that's not something that, people particularly like, I guess, openly, talk about. I think it's a lot of labeling, around it. And that, people often, I guess, call it, it's a stress at work, rather than actually, I think, like a use, for example, like anxiety or, talking about even, like racism and bullying, like what Bianca was saying. So it's quite a lot of, I guess, downplaying, I guess, what's happening. And the other part, I guess, that, particularly with the participants, from the rural and regional areas, they're not a lot of support available for them anyway. And this is where, I guess, for them, I guess, the support, the important or critical support for them is really, from their colleagues, from, that's why they keep calling it, the management. So that refers to obviously the supervisor and I guess, the management of the facility, but also they draw on a lot of the strengths, from the multicultural community. So it doesn't mean that, I guess, people from like the same, I guess, ethnic background or cultural background, as them. But, more broadly, I guess, because, as you can imagine, in some of the rural areas, you might have, one or two actually people, of a certain ethnicity or cultural background. And that makes it difficult, I guess, because, you do not have the numbers of, I guess you can have in Melbourne, you can have a more specialized sort of, cultural support that could be specific for you, that you can tap into. So that's I guess, it's what's happening at the moment. But, I'm pretty sure, it's a great questions, Magdalena, that, I don't think that, we, I don't think we, I guess, explore that in depth. And I'm pretty sure that, that's definitely, one of a good area that, we can investigate more on.
Well, definitely, I'll be very, very keen to hear how this research progresses because, yes, that's I would guess that's super needed. And speaking about mental health in your language make things way easier for everyone. I would imagine that's, thank you so much for sharing those outcomes. And I suppose that is super related with Professor Brichna's presentation as well, because again, if you feel that you have gone through a racist client, how could be a support could guarantee that you could be assertive, respond properly, and the organization support you to manage the type of situations, right? I think we have Natalia with a question. Go for it, Natalia. Go for it.
Thank you. Thank you to all of you. It's been a fantastic session and really great to start having these conversations in the sector. For me, I guess it's, Bianca again and Irene, thank you for raising the racism into this, because I think it's something that we have only recently started to talk about, and the impact, and that, the organization I work for, it's predominantly migrant workforce, predominantly white Anglo residents. And so that issue is alive and well for us, and something we're really grappling with and trying to figure out how to address. The challenge, I guess, for the sector is that this is not addressed through the reform from what I'm seeing. And so even you, Bianca, talking about that roadmap and talking about terminating services potentially, when we actually realistically can't do that. There needs to be a major breach, and I don't think racism is seen as a major breach for that. So with the security of tenure, that's so embedded, and rightly so, but you know, it's challenging to actually come to that point. And it's also, you know, the new Aged Care Act and the reform now seems to only talk about the rights. There's no responsibilities anymore for older people, which is an interesting situation for us as providers. And again, I can understand why those things are happening, but it's going to create, I think, even more challenges for us to deal with some of these issues at a systemic level, and then how we actually operationalize that. So I don't know, you know, also having ACCPA representatives, I guess, here in terms of that advocacy voice as well. You know, is there something happening in this space, I guess is what I'm asking, or any tips, or, you know, is there something we can do?
Yeah, so I can answer that in a few ways. So I agree at the systems level, at the government level, there has been a resounding silence on this issue. And we have brought it to the government's attention. I sit on the diversity subcommittee, and we've raised it there certainly a few times. We've raised it through our consultations and input into the new Aged Care Act as well. Government, I think, has not done a lot on this issue, but I think is increasingly being pushed to do it for the very simple reason that psychological injury is going up in aged care. And if it's being driven by racism is even one factor, then there's an obligation for them to do something around it, because it drives up everyone's insurance premiums and work cover premiums. And so you got to do something, because it costs a lot of money to do nothing. So I think that's definitely going to be something that is on the agenda, which is good news. In terms of I guess, rights and responsibilities as articulated in the legislation, yes, you're right to pick that up. We certainly noted that as well. It is quite interesting how that's not talked about a lot, but it does need to be brought to attention. Whether we embed the issue of racism within the current Aged Care Act, we can debate that. There's a lot of it embedded in the OH&S Act and in human rights. And things like that, and some of those discrimination laws, etc. So it is there. It's not that it isn't. But really, ultimately, you know, what's in legislation and what goes on in an everyday basis, there's a big gap. That's a different world, right? You don't say to an older person in residential aged care or anywhere else, well, you know, the law says this, therefore you must do that. That's not how we communicate and engage with each other. And so I think that's when I was talking about that, really, when we think about how we confront this issue in everyday practice, it is really about that interpersonal engagement and that organizational support to facilitate a degree of change. Will it solve the problem? Probably not. But at the end of the day, you know, like I said, your staff and your residents, they don't need to be best of friends. They just need to treat each other with respect. And sometimes if it isn't the older person or the client who's the problem, but the family, you know, you can also put in place other kind of techniques and strategies to address some of their needs. And you can work to a point. But if you just get to a point where nothing is solving the issue, not even rotating the staff member out and putting different staff member in, if it's just not ever getting resolved, then you actually can't deliver good quality care. You're not able to meet your obligation there. And then it is best to sort of say to the client in that instance, well, look, you know, I'm sorry, we can't meet your need. You might need to think about going somewhere else, and we can help you find somewhere else to go. Interestingly, people will either pull their heads in at that point in time, or they'll go somewhere else. And either way, your problem gets solved one day. So, you know.
I just wanted to add to that, if it's okay, Magda, to the sort of from a broader perspective as well. I think in terms of definitely, Natalia, we need a more strategic approach to workforce issues, to the workforce from multicultural backgrounds. And we are, as Bianca said, we are trying, you know, through various avenues, and one is through the Diversity Consultative Committee, because I think at the moment, there is so much in the workforce space. Racism is one of the key issues, but then it's also what Irene was talking about, the well-being, recognition of prior learning, whether it's, you know, from overseas or but also people's bilingual and bicultural skills and how they maybe are recognized in the current system or not recognized. And then also, I guess, that, career progression, all that sort of things, and that can also be linked to racism, obviously. So I think we need a more targeted approach at the policy, at the sectoral level to support and manage and talk about these issues of the culture linguistically diverse workforce. So I think, yeah, there's more to be done. And we need to, I think, as a sector, come together and see how we can do that. To ensure that we have better outcomes for people working in the care industry. And just on that note, on the Aged Care Act, when we, for example, talk about trauma-informed care, it's very important to include that from the senior, from the care recipient perspective, but also trauma-informed care, the importance of trauma-informed care from the staff perspective. So we actually put that into our submission into the Aged Care Act, that also needs to include trauma-informed care, from the perspective of the staff, because for many people from diverse backgrounds, they may have a refugee experience, they may have whatever traumas they had before, and that applies to everybody. So that needs to be included as well. So we advocate for that as well. So I just wanted to add that to your question, Natalia. Thank you, Magda.
Thank you all. That's been pretty useful. Just browsing to confirm if we have further questions. I think we have one in the chat box. Thank you, Nikki. First, your workshops are face-to-face or online. I think that is for Bianca, I think. Secondly, is there any possibility some of the content of your workshops could be developed into learning teaching modules?
Short answer is yes. Yeah, we have developed them into some learning and teaching modules, and we deliver it both face-to-face and online. Yeah.
Cheryl wrote the question that I have in my head.
By the way, hi Cheryl, nice to see you. You're enjoying Bali.
Fantastic. All right. I suppose that another Annabelle has a question. What is your perspective on the future of the culturally inclusive care being provided in the future? I suppose that that's for all of you. I suppose that from your perspective, each of you, I think have a lot to say here. Any of you want to start?
I'm happy to start, Magda. Thank you for the question. So I think looking into culture appropriate care and how that may look into the future, I think I would say that, in an ideal world where, everyone's needs, whether it's cultural, spiritual, faith needs, linguistic needs, we might not need, that sort of support that we are providing at the moment for diversity groups. But what's happening in reality, I think, organizations such as, Bianca's, PCAC's, multicultural organizations, they're so vital because at the moment we're not meeting it through the generalist system. That's what happens. I mean, there's variations, and some organizations are doing that very well. And government, we have the free translation project that Fiona talked about. But that's, I think, why we still need a lot of support, for our multicultural communities, because, it's more and more becoming a majority of the community. And there's around 37% of seniors were born overseas, and the majority of them are from mainly non-English speaking countries. I think we still, and as Bianca was showing the chart of, how the demographic is shifting and increasing numbers of seniors from multicultural backgrounds going to the, the aging and needing aged care service into the future. I think we definitely need to continue to see this as a priority, support for seniors from multicultural backgrounds. And I think we really need to realize that I think it's good to say again that it's not a minority actually in the country. It's actually very large, very significant proportion of the country. I think we need to sort of think it from that perspective, from how we can partner, how we can collaborate, and how we can all make it work, for everyone. But I think that still needs that targeted approach, and will still continue to be very important to provide culturally appropriate care into the future, because we haven't managed it yet to do that in that completely holistic sense in in the system we're having at the moment. There might be various reasons for that: lack of knowledge, lack of funding, lack of time in the aged care space as well. But I think it will continue to be a huge issue, and we, as a sector, we need to work together to deliver culturally appropriate care. Thank you, Magda.
Thank you, Nikki. I don't know if any of the people from the panel want to add.
Can I just add to what
Sure.
Nikki was just saying? I think, I totally agree with you, Nikki. I think we should actually make this a normal part of care. I just feel that sometimes, we see this as a minority issue. It's no longer a minority issue. So I think, it should be the norm of the care, not actually the exception of the care. And I think that, we need to, again, like come back to the I guess the principles around, is a person-centered care. So regardless, whatever the person is, background and whatever, we are delivering the care for that person. So we need to make sure that, we need, we meet the needs of that particular person, because, like even like a Chinese, there are so many different, I guess, types, of Chinese, for example, because I'm Chinese myself. And, it's not sort of one size fits all, even within, one ethnic background or even one, even language, I guess, so I think it's understanding, the care for the person. I think it's very critical.
Thank you so much, Professor Blackberry. Not sure if someone else wants to add something else. I have in the pipe. Yeah,
I'll
go
just
for
jump
it.
in quickly,
Sure.
very quickly. Yeah. So I'm a very glass half full person, and I actually believe that culturally inclusive care can be provided, and it absolutely will be provided into the future. And it will be provided in a couple of different ways. So one is, as our older populations, if we look at where the aging is occurring in diverse communities, and we look at where our workforces are coming from as well, there is actually opportunity for greater cultural matching as time goes on. And that's quite interesting, because we have done some work where you can actually culturally and ethnically match your client and your worker. You get all sorts of really amazing things happening. And your worker really elevates and becomes a boundary crosser in many ways for the sorts of things that they end up doing. That's one side of the coin. The other side is sometimes you can't culturally match. It's not going to work for various reasons. And even then, we know that really the foundations for good inclusive care, akin to the foundations for, I guess, even person-centered care, is really around continuity of care, a feeling of being cared for and cared about, of being listened to, and of being respected. And that applies as much to the client or the older person as it does to the staff member. And so where you can have that interaction and that reciprocity going on, it works really well.
Thank you, Professor Brichna. I have another question for the whole group from Lori. What are the key challenges and opportunities of working with a diverse workforce? I suppose that you too, Professor Blackberry and Professor Brichna, talk already directly about part of that.
You want to go first, Bianca, because you did talk about, I guess, that opportunities, Bianca.
Sure, no worries, Larry. All good. I might also I'll throw Fiona into the mix also in a minute, Fiona, so just a heads up about it. But I think some of the key challenges and well, they're really for me the opportunities more than the challenges is. So here's opportunity one. When we talk to migrant care workers and we ask them, do you intend to leave aged care? And the vast majority say no. And you think to yourself, hang on, here's a workforce that gets lousy shifts and poor pay and experiences racism, and they still want to do the work, right? So this is a good thing. We need to actually harness this talent, right? We need to hold on to it. When we ask people in residential aged care, the workers say, why do you do this work? And then they will often say, well, my mom and dad are left behind in India or Ghana or wherever it might be, and I can't look after them. So for me, doing the work that I do here, I see a lot of meaning in it. This is my way of giving back, of looking after someone. And, you know, it gives meaning to my life and to what I'm doing. And the third thing a lot of them say is, because many are women, they say it's flexible work, right? It's secure work, but it's also relatively flexible work. So I can juggle my kids and I can juggle my kind of other commitments around it. So there are really a lot of opportunities there that we need to effectively harness to hold on to these staff. Now, some of the challenges are around things like people obviously not being completely au fait with how the aged care system works, with how dementia might, what dementia even is, and how dementia might affect an older person. Some of the clinical conditions that they might confront, right? So what's the falls risk and all of those sorts of things in good nutrition, palliation, etc. There's already a whole suite of micro-credentialing courses that are coming out targeting aged care workers addressing these needs. So it's not that it can't be solved. For me, the bigger kind of cultural issues are around how do we actually retain this workforce that we are now investing so much money in. So for me, that's the big challenge and that's the opportunity. And I think providing linguistically appropriate services is really critical there. So that's where I was going to chuck it to Fiona.
Bianca, thank you. I certainly feel very humbled by the depth of expertise that the rest of the panel members have about aged care. But I mean, I guess from a language provision and a communication point of view, you know, being able to mainstream that approach of, you know, when you're thinking about communication, both to your workforce, but also because the workforce is also culturally and linguistically diverse, and so is the client group. Just thinking about inclusive communication from the outset is, you know, is going to be one of those, I think, an essential ingredient that we see through all of the sort of social campaign work that we do, not just in aged care, but certainly it applies in aged care. Because when that inclusive communication is thought about at the start, it's not just a bolt-on that you do at the end once you've done all the English work. And I think that's one of the things I think I'd probably love to see, both from that future point of view, but also it's a great opportunity to just shift that thinking a
bit. Professor Blackberry.
Yeah, I just added that comment. You know, I agree with you, Bianca. You know, like in our studies, you know, for the migrant workforce, you know, actually working in aged care, you know, they actually see that as a professional work. They see that as a valued, you know, work. So they you know, they're very motivated, you know, because, you know, they see it as an important part that they're actually caring for someone. I know that, you know, the general, I guess, narrative, you know, like in Australia is, you know, is a low pay, you know, like no one wants to do that, whatever, that's true. But, you know, if we want to look at which is the challenges, I guess, you know, that's the norm. But, you know, the opportunities is that, you know, for a lot of the migrant workforce, not only that enables them to actually enter the employment market, but also, you know, for them, you know, to be able to be recognized as a profession. I know there is no professional bodies per se, obviously. It's different to, like, you know, nursing, you know, allied health and so on. But for them, you know, I mean, they're very proud about what they do, despite the fact, you know, it's a low pay. So that you know, I guess supporting, you know, valuing, you know, that motivation, I guess, you know, why people do come to work. It's not all about money. I think it's very important, and I do agree about, you know, having, you know, like mutual respects, I think, to make it work. So, but I thought, you know, it's a great insights that, you know, despite the fact the narrative is so negative, you know, in Australia.
Thank you so much to all of you, Professor Blackberry, Professor Brichna, Fiona Nixon, Nicholas Rittinghausen, Mark Thompson, and the team from ACCPA behind, Michelle. I have to introduce Alison, driving force, along with Nicholas, for coordinating this forum. Alison is highly regarded in the field of home and community care, posting a rich tapestry of experience across various roles within the sector. Alison has traversed roles ranging from direct care worker to case manager, accumulating invaluable insights and expertise along the way. In her current capacity, Alison has assumed the pivotal role of home care and community care specialist team leader with the Age and Community Care Providers Association, ACCPA. In this role, she serves as a linchpin supporting both care providers and candidates in fostering staff retention and enhancing the sector's capabilities. At ACCPA, Alison spearheads the retention team within the Home Care Careers Program with a deep understanding of the intricacies of the home and community care landscape. Alison is instrumental in shaping strategies that not only retain talented staff, but also empower them to thrive within their roles. Thank you so much, Alison and ACCPA team from the Center for Cultural Diversity in Aging to coordinate this with us. Alison.
Thanks, Magdalena. Sorry, we've gone a little bit over time, so I'll be as quick as I possibly can. I just want to conclude our Cultural Care Forum and just thank everybody for sharing their insights and their passions on this topic. I would like to start by expressing my gratitude to Mark Thompson for delivering a heartfelt and meaningful welcome to country. At the start of today's forum. We began by obviously addressing the well-being of our culturally diverse workforce, led by Irene from the Care Economy Institute at La Trobe University. Supporting their needs are vital to fostering and inclusivity in aged care, and I really want to thank her for her words today. Nicholas, the manager from the Cultural Diversity in Aging, highlighted the importance of our culturally appropriate care and available support resources, which there are amazing resources online there. The knowledge is essential for delivering sensitive care to elderly individuals from diverse backgrounds. Fiona then spoke obviously from Think HQ and discussed the Department of Health and Aged Care initiative to provide complementary translation services for our aged care providers nationwide. This ensures culturally safe, inclusive care in line with the quality standards. Bianca from the National Aging Research Institute tackled the critical issue of racism in aged care. Having worked in this sector for such a long time, it is an insight that I was very happy to bring to this table and have Bianca come and speak. I think it's a discussion that we all know needs to be had and has been swept under the rug for far too long. So I thank her for her words today as well. And obviously that need for respect and equality within the sector. A heartfelt thank you to all of our speakers for their insights. Your contributions are invaluable. Let's maintain the momentum that we've built today. Thank you to all the participants for your contributions. I would like to share a special thank you to our ACCPA events team to helping to support the event, and also Nicholas and Magda for collaborating with me and ACCPA and Home Care Careers to bring this event together. Please look out for our follow-up email, which will have some presentations from today, as well as some other resources and a short survey just to get some feedback. Because all of your feedback does shape our future events. Thank you to everyone for taking the time out of their busy schedules. I know how busy it is at provider level to join us today, and we work towards fostering an inclusive and culturally responsive aged care sector for our future.